Chairman. And Ms. Tai, as you know from our meeting last month, I'm delighted that you've been nominated. And I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Tai, though, behind you, for her work on finding alternative ways to treat opioid addiction. Incredibly important issue. On trade, as you know from your time at USTR, it's a very special place. It's full of career experts on trade, almost all of whom could make a lot more money in the private sector. They're committed, they're passionate, and I enjoy it. I know you're going to thrive there, largely because of commitments that I made when I was before the Senate Finance Committee 16 years ago. I conducted what was called the top-to-bottom review of China. We issued an extensive report. We also established a prosecutor. I said, we need a prosecutor just for China, who became sort of the chief counsel of China. You later had that job. Let me ask you if you would make a commitment today to update that top-to-bottom review. Everybody in this panel has talked about China. I mean, I think it's clearly the most important single trade issue we face. Would you commit today to updating that and providing it to the committee?
Senator Portman, you know, I think that the Biden administration itself is committed to a holistic review on China and a U.S.-China strategy. If confirmed at USTR, I think that's an excellent idea. And yes, absolutely, I would want to make sure that that review happens at USTR as well.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to surprise you with that, but I just was thinking about it as we heard all the questions, and I think it is timely. A lot has changed in those 16 years. Mostly changed in the way that China's become even more competitive, used even more subsidies. And under the current regime has decided that state-owned enterprises and heavy subsidies are going to be the norm rather than the exception. And this goes to semiconductors. And there's been a lot of discussion today on semiconductors. I appreciate what the chairman said, the ranking member, Senator Stabenow, Senator Cornyn, and others. I mean, this is an urgent issue. We're looking at serious impacts on our economy because of the supply chain issues. Here's what China's doing on semiconductors. They're heavily subsidizing it. One study found that major Chinese semiconductor firms have received subsidies equal to 20 to 40% of their revenues, subsidies of up to 40% of the revenues. You know, we can't compete with that. And so, you know, phase one with China was a good start. And Bob Lighthizer hasn't gotten enough love in the room today. He did a lot of hard work on that, and I appreciate that. But we need to take it to the next level because it's really more than just non-market. I think it's techno-nationalist approach to trade that we have to stand up to. How would you propose we do a better job of addressing those unfair industrial subsidies and their proliferation, particularly by state-owned enterprises?
Senator Portman, I think this is part and parcel of some of the most important questions that are facing us today, not just on trade, but across the board, which is how we compete more effectively with China. China's done an incredible job of articulating its ambitions in its 5-year plans and accomplishing a lot of the goals that it has set for itself. You mentioned semiconductors, and I want to acknowledge that that is an area where there's a lot of focus right now, which is really great, about how we more strategically shape our supply chains. I would just say that the Chinese are not shy about articulating their ambitions, and semiconductors are just a part of what we have to compete with. We can't compete by doing the things China does, so we have to figure out how we compete, marshaling all the tools and resources that we have in the U.S. government.
That's the idea, you know, of the CHIPS Act. We talked about it earlier. I was at the White House yesterday, a good meeting on that. Let's switch to WTO for a second. The World Trade Organization was established to have rules that were beneficial to countries like ours that are willing to, you know, play by the rules, level playing field. And it's important that we have those rules for our exporters. But the current system seems broken to me. The WTO negotiation role has faded. Instead, we have activism by the appellate body that has constrained our ability, frankly, to respond to China's non-market activities as well as other countries. This is a critique that's longstanding. It's bipartisan. Senator Cardin, who was here earlier, I think is coming back, and I introduced legislation on WTO reforms. I know you've seen those. Again, USTR, Lighthizer made some progress on this, but we've got to continue this work. My question for you, I guess, would be, you have said you want a positive agenda for WTO reform. Specifically, what do you propose we do to restore the WTO to being a forum for negotiation rather than litigation?
Senator Portman, it's a special honor to be speaking to you as a senator on this committee, but also a former USTR. And as such, you, I know, have special insights into the U.S. relationship and the U.S. role at the WTO. I just want to say the United States was a founding member of the WTO and of the GATT before that. It has always been a leader in Geneva. We can't afford not to continue to be engaged and a leader in Geneva at the WTO. The WTO does need reform, and I believe that the focus should be the WTO now in its 26th year of existence. We need to be having hard conversations in Geneva in a constructive way, to be asking what is the value of the WTO to its members? Is it accomplishing the goals that its founders and members expect of it? And also, in today's world, in 2021, how does the WTO rise to the challenges of today's world, whether the challenges that are facing all of us or the challenges that exist between the WTO's countries and members?
I look forward
Thank
to
you,
working with
Senator Thune.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Tai,